Hello and welcome to TMKF Netrunner. I'm not Yeti, and I'm joined today by.
A Kikai, hello.
Hello, thank you for coming on. And as is keeping with tradition for this Top Cut, we've got you on because you are in this game. You are you are here playing on the left, playing Steve Cambridge, very fittingly
Yep, playing Steve Cambridge in Cambridge and
from Cambridge.
from Cambridge, yes.
And so yeah, you played Steve at EMEA in Italy, didn't you?
Did and did pretty well, like which was a bit of a surprise and a shock, I think, to me as well as everyone else.
Yeah, you were the only criminal player in the top cut. Is that right? Uh,
Oh God, I can't remember. It might no, I think there was a couple of other criminals in the top cut, but I think notably there was no reg crim in the top cut. Right,
okay.
every criminal was doing something weird. I think we all had different fractors or something like that.
That makes sense. And you ended up finishing fourth at EMEA. Is that right?
Yeah, I got knocked out. Actually, it was the Steve game that got me knocked out. It was the Steve into the mad combo ob, which I think is a game that I'm really quite disappointed in myself for losing because we've got so much damage protection in the Steve that
Mm.
I'm actually a little bit disappointed in myself that I gave, so I feel like I gave that game away, if that makes sense. But they played very well. They played to their outs, but yeah, I don't think that's really a game we should ever be losing.
Interesting. Interesting. So, talk to me about the general plan for the Steve. I've played a bunch of it as well, but I really like the deck. But what's the general gist?
So usually in any other matchup, usually what we're doing is we're just trying to put pressure on the corp pretty much from turn one if we can. We want to be putting the corp in an uncomfortable position every turn if possible, making one good run a turn to do that. In initial terms, what this means is usually we're mulliganing looking for two Steve targets, so like a laundry and a gamble, something like that. Anything that's going to turn our Steve ability on, because once our Steve ability is live, we can start pressuring HQ and forcing some reses. Um, in this matchup, it's a bit different. We can't do that on a turn to turn basis because the game goes much longer. So we need a much longer term strategy to winning this game.
Yeah, and so the way in one of the ways in which the Steve exerts that pressure is through spending all 15 of your influence on just three different Anarch cards, two copies of Banhar, three copies of Steelskin Scarring, and three copies of Strike Fund. And then you're using that to get those accesses, put on that pressure. You're also quite interestingly playing quite a large suite of one-of cards. You've got the three criminal cybernetics. You've got Docklands Pass. You've got Sneak Door Beta. Um, what are all of those kind of one-ofs doing, and how do you feel about kind of using Banhart in the matchup against Dagon Fusion?
Yeah, so all of those cards are allowing us to apply that pressure while also progressing our board state, right? The cybernetics are all rewarding you for making that one good run a turn. Particularly Zenit Chip is also allowing you to progress your board state while you do it. Panweave as well. Sneak Door is just a great card in Steve, right? You put so with the Banhar with your boomerangs, like you put so much pressure on HQ that they often commit three ice to HQ, and then it feels so good to play Sneak Door when they've done that, right? They've spent three clicks and three credits just installing that ice plus the res cost, and now it doesn't do anything because you're just Sneak Dooring in.
But yeah, it would
Anyway,
be pretty fair to say that there's like a lot of cards that you're kind of slightly scared to lose to Banhart, right? Like
so
it's
I really enjoy the hand management element of playing the Banhart. Like I played the Essa at Worlds last year, and it's the same thing, right? You're constantly managing your hand, as well as trying to manage the board state and manage the credit pool. It feels like playing this Steve deck feels like there is no part of the game that isn't relevant. The cards in your hand are relevant, the card in the corpse hand are relevant, credit totals on both sides are relevant, icebreakers, like every part of the game is relevant and is a thing that you need to manage as the runner at all times. So I just really
interesting.
enjoy that playstyle.
Yeah, and yeah, so it looks like we're getting off here. So for context, Bowlsley is playing a Ag Infusion, and this was open deck list. He's playing a Ag Infusion very similar to the ones that soccer did well in the American kind of nationals season. Um, and I don't know if it will come up in this game, but he's also on, instead of the Offworld Office, one copy of Sisyphus Protocol, which is quite cute. And instead of the third Bran, he's playing a Mick, which is fantastic card in my opinion. Really kind of nasty Ag Infusion target there.
I absolutely love the MIC splash into Ag Infusion. I think 2 influence is a perfectly reasonable influence cost. You're very happy to pay it. I think it's the best Ag Infusion boop target that you have in the deck. I think that the threat of losing 2 clicks a lot of the time is much more significant than the threat of net damage. So yeah, I really like the MIC include.
Yeah, and so Bowsley got off with a big economic start, which is maybe not what you want to see as Steve. Hansley Review into Hedge Fund, Ice HQ, respecting all of the various horrible things you can do. And then you've Sure Gambled. You ran R&D there. Is that just to get an early access and try and get that kind of point advantage early?
So we have to play the very long game against Ag Infusion, and one of the difficulties playing against Ag Infusion is bacterial programming, which essentially says once you steal bacterial programming, you can't steal agendas for like 2 turns. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, which is a real problem. If you leave your agenda steals too late in the game, that's a real problem. So usually I would not recommend taking single accesses of R&D without like at least without a Paragon or a Laundry or something to get you value. But against Ag Infusion, I'm just like I need to steal an agenda early if I can. So I actually in this matchup I actually value those single accesses of R&D in the early game.
That makes sense. And so we see the second piece of ice coming down. You've got an Earthrise Hotel ticking, and you're quite a fan of the Earthrise Hotel, right? I remember we talked about it before, but you think it's kind of better than the Class Act in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I wouldn't blame anyone for going for 3 Class Act, 2 Earthrise. I'm actually playing 3 and 3 now, but I can't remember in this list. I think this list is 2 Earthrise, 3 Class Act, but I prefer the Earthrise. I think
you were prepared for some Asmari to tell
That's exactly it. Like I was so worried about dying to Asmari, I put the 3rd Class Act in. But I think broadly I prefer the value of having 6 cards over 3 turns. The filter draw is still good. The burst 4 cards is still good, but more cards is also more good.
We lost the Boomerang out of hand there to the Waken Plant. Waking Plant, I guess the plan is we're going to get HQ accesses. I think that if we're not getting HQ accesses, we're not winning the game. And do you think that getting that down early is a very good sign, or is that something that's potentially not going to pay off if they get the bacterial steal?
So
or score.
We're now playing the long game. Okay, we can't exert any pressure here realistically. Exerting pressure here, I think, would be a mistake. Now that we've got ice and R&D and HQ, because rezzing ice for Ag Infusion is actually a benefit. Like usually against Corpse, we're just attacking servers, forcing rezzes, but against Ag Infusion, we really don't want to do that. We really just want to pick 2 servers and attack those servers. And I think the 2 servers we want to attack here are going to be HQ and the remote. We're nowhere near ready to start attacking HQ. So we are just setting up here. So the wake is, we're going to get that down now while there's no, while we're not worried about the meat damage hit.
Yeah.
But really we're looking to get Tremolo online. So we need 2 Cybernetics or ideally all 3 Cybernetics to get that Tremolo working in the long game.
And here comes the second one. And I think at the moment, or in the Steve deck, my favourite Cybernetic, Panweave, a card that I was pretty convinced wasn't going to see... was never going to see any play, ends up being kind of incredibly powerful in the Steve deck, I think. But losing a Tremolo to install it, I don't think that's a massive concern for you, right?
The second Tremolo is in hand.
Okay.
So, yeah, otherwise probably I install the Tremolo before the Panweave.
I think I spot a Charlotte and a Lacosta in Bowsley's hand there. I can't quite tell at this angle, but it might be the case that Bowsley's going to be able to get that uber efficient economy engine going, but definitely taking the time to make sure there's enough ice. Yeah, and I would believe that is a Charlotte and an Ag Infusion.
So Charlotte is a concern in both this matchup and the BTL matchup.
Yes, of course. You played the BTL earlier on stream as well.
Yeah, it can feel like the game is getting away from you. Like the Charlotte value is so great, right? That 4 credits a turn. But it is also draw a card a turn. So usually as Agony Fusion, you need to let the Charlotte cook for 3 or 4 turns.
Hmm.
Something like that in a normal matchup. Against Criminal, it's longer than that. You really need to let it cook for like 5 or 6 turns, I think, because of the economic denial. And if you go too early, you can get yourself in real trouble. The nice kind of like balancing thing with that is Charlotte forces you to draw cards, so the longer that the Charlotte sits in the remote, the more agendas come into HQ. So we're not playing any pinhole. We can't deal with the Charlotte directly, but what we can do is steal agendas out of HQ while Charlotte is cooking.
I still find the decision to not play any pinhole quite interesting. You're a bit of a pinhole skeptic in general, is it fair to say?
I am a pinhole skeptic. This is true. It might just be me not knowing how to play it properly, but my logic here is I've got sneak door. It sounds really weird, but I've got sneak door. I don't need pinhole because I've got sneak door. Now that sounds really weird, but I feel like if I need pinhole to attack the remote, mate, I can just win off centrals. Whether that's completely true, I don't know.
Okay, if that archives was open enough for you to be able to be interfering with the remote server, there's probably a better use of your click uh, on centrals. Makes sense. Um, Both of you doing reasonably well here for money. You did get the tremolo down, which makes perfect sense. You don't want to risk losing that. But also important, the revolver is down, which is a card that is going to be important to manage in the matchup. I guess you don't really want to be risking losing even a single copy of revolver to net damage because of the number of sentries that you're probably going to have to break in this game.
We have 3 revolvers, so I think losing one is manageable. But you're right, it's not ideal. Like there is a line where you tax the revolver counters, which I think is a reasonable line. Um, Emergency Shutdown is the card that you're most worried about losing. I think specifically in this matchup, you really want to play 3 Emergency Shutdowns, so both copies of Emergency Shutdown and Steve a third copy back. And that's quite important. So that's the card that we're really looking to try and avoid hitting with net damage.
And so we see in the remote server, I thought that this was actually an agenda push, but looking at the Charlotte is still there. We've installed and double advanced what must be a biovolt, um, which is quite interesting. There's a lot of potentially good runs for you to make here. And is that you running HQ and no reses on centrals? I guess Bowlsley only on 10 credits there. Getting a Pounding Trigger, getting a Wake Trigger, getting a Steve, and accessing a Talibola.
Yeah, you wouldn't expect to see both of these ice res because it's nice to have the ag ability live to defend against diversion of funds. But I was surprised not to see the outermost res.
Yeah,
I
I
don't.
guess if it is, say, an Anansi, that could open up some risks in Bowsley's board. Um,
Yeah,
but
I think if memory serves, and I mean it must be an Nancy. An Nancy here, I think, is almost the only thing that makes sense. I think the worry here is that any res on HQ opens up the remote,
yeah,
and Bowsley can't afford to let the remote be open.
um, which makes sense. I think it would be difficult for you to get in and effectively trash anything kind of useful. And we see, I think, what is like. I was in the room. You could. I'm not. Don't think that's my shadow moving in the background, but I was in the room watching this quietly, and this kind of arms folded, both of you taking time to think, and like very considered play was pretty much a theme throughout the whole match. And there we see the MIC resed.
This is an incredible res.
Is that third
Outermost,
click that you ran that? So you do lose a click.
yeah, I think I was playing around the MIC to a certain extent. I obviously don't want to run last click because that's you just get booped.
Yeah.
But I think I was trying to do some damage limitation on in case there was an MIC. This is such a good piece of ice to have on the outermost of the remote. Um,
Yeah. Because
yeah,
now any run into unresed ice is potentially your last click of the turn, right? If you if you run last click, then you might not get in because the ag boot might just stop you. And if you run any other click, you might not get in because you might just get chucked into the mick and lose most of your turn.
Yeah, and this could be a very heads up play for why the ice on HQ wasn't rezzed. It could be Bowlsley saying, if I don't res ice on HQ, I think you might attack the remote, which I obviously did, and getting that MIC res is just fantastic.
Yeah, and we are removing the Charlotte to install in the server. We have 8 credits on Bowsley's side, but you have no real answer to the mick at the moment. And knowing that Cat's Cradle is your decoder doesn't seem like there's a good way of breaking through that mick anytime soon.
This might sound strange, but I cannot tell you how happy I was to see this push as the runner.
Why is that?
Because that Charlotte has only ticked twice, right? Even in a normal game, that's not enough Charlotte. You need more Charlotte than that to get you through the game. And against Criminal, that's nowhere near enough Charlotte to get you through the game. And when you think, well, what went in that remote? It has to be Nisei. Like there's no other card I think that you would overinstall the Charlotte for, because the remote is so safe. Sometimes you would overinstall Charlotte with Charlotte in order to beat a run, but the remote is so safe here that I don't see Bowsley doing that. This is far too, in my opinion, this is far too early to be pushing in this A, and this gives me an in to start attacking HQ every turn.
We Van had the remote running it, and we hit 2 steel skins as our first 2 hits. I think we did draw into potentially, I think, our last cybernetic, but we shall see. You get through the mick. Now, what's your logic here? I mean, all it's going to take is 1 ag boop or 1 biovolt to stop you getting back in. Are you just looking to exert some pressure and make it so that you can't get booped off of HQ?
It's very easy against Ag Infusion to give up, to say, I can't possibly get into this remote because of all the end the run effects. You must not give up. You must look for efficient, economical ways to force these end of the run effects to be triggered. So what
and
we
you did
here,
force the biovolt use there, yeah.
which I am overjoyed about, which is fantastic, right? That is the cheapest way for me to force that biovolt pop, I think, would be like Banhar through an MIC. So we're very happy about that.
Interesting. And so we still do have the Ag Infusion ability, which means that an HQ run here is very risky, I think. But is that the Cat's Cradle in your right hand there? Which would make a big difference, I think.
Yeah, I don't... I mean, it's still a heck of a lot of credits to break MIC. I don't know if we ever break MIC with Cat's Cradle.
And yeah, we do get that third one down. Now, Tremolo. It breaks Bran pretty well at this stage of the game.
4 credits to break Bran, 0 to break Tatibola, 0 to break Border Control. Those are good numbers.
All of those are pretty good numbers, and they are all cards that do other things for you. This feels pretty good. It is 2 strength and 2 to boost 2, but in this matchup, without, I don't know if Bowsley does have a rhyme, but I think you're in a pretty good spot. This breaks all of the ice here pretty efficiently.
Yeah, that very occasionally, you come across some niche ice that has some awkward strength numbers on it, but usually it's fine.
So, do you ever consider banharing the mick here just so that if you get booped into it, it's damage rather than losing your clicks?
Yeah, I think you have to consider that, and you don't love installing Banhar against this deck, right? Because there's a lot of net damage out there already, but you've got no other way of dealing with MIC effectively. So I think it is useful and sometimes essential to have that option to take net instead of losing clicks.
Do have an HQ run here. Tattoo Bowler costs 0 to break, so I imagine you will choose to do so. But it does end up being 2 credits positive for Bowsley, which is a very sensible thing for a piece of ice to do.
Tattoo Bow is an incredible card in Ag Infusion. Not only is it a 2 credit gain, we now have another unresed ice on the innermost, which is exactly where you want it in this matchup.
But we do get to fire off the quite impressive run of on success effects. That's 2 credit swing, gain a weight counter, draw a card, and we're going to recur something. Probably just some... a Steel Skin Scarring makes perfect sense. Your money is good enough here. I like the Steel Skin, I think, as a pickup.
Yeah, I'm obviously struggling with knowing exactly what to pick up. This is one of the difficulties, I think, with the Steve deck, is you can go into the tank on like every turn trying to figure out what on earth to pick up with Steve. And sometimes you end up picking up too many cards and overdrawing and discarding, and then you just feel a bit silly.
There are very real situations where declining the Street Steve trigger is a good thing to do, but they can be hard to spot. Losing that Charlotte there must feel very good for you and pretty tough for Bowlsley, right? You get the impression that he made that Nisei push with the knowledge that he was going to be able to replace that Charlotte the turn after, start immediately recovering, and taking that out of hand must be pretty impactful.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact term where Bowlsley pushed the Nisei, but if there was a click to advance it, I think that would have been a very good thing to do. I think it was very obvious that it was an agenda.
Emergency shutdown the Mick. We love good. Emergency shutdown. I've got to say, I think emergency shutdown, like one of the things that I love about this Steve deck, right? More than anything is the cards that get played in the Steve deck that don't get played in the other decks, but are massively fun and impactful. And that's Emergency Shutdown, Sneak Door Beta, Pan Weave, all of these cards that apply economic pressure in really interesting ways.
The very strange thing about Emergency Shutdown is 2 Emergency Shutdown is incredible, 3 is terrible, and I couldn't tell you why.
Oh, what, just in the list?
Yeah, if you put a third Emergency Shutdown in, it's awful, and I could not tell you why.
But being able to recur 2 and get the third... I guess that is the difference, right? In Steve, often, if you're playing 3 copies of a card, it's a bit like playing 5 copies of a card. And if you're playing 2 copies of a card, it's a bit like playing 3 copies of a card. So, I guess there is that question of how many good uses are you going to get? And we're choosing to use the Ag Infusion Boop. I believe that's last click. Yeah, it's last click. To stop you getting a big Wake Dig. How do you feel about that decision from Bowlsley there? We know we've got the Tattoo Bowler in hand, but unless we've got even more ice to back it up, that feels pretty rough.
Yeah, I guess if you're looking at a HQ with no agendas in it, and you want to push, the problem with the Wake is you can't push, right? Because you're not going to be drawing agendas.
Yeah, if you manage to lock R&D.
So yeah, I don't love it. As runner, like, you're pretty happy. You're perfectly happy with that boop, right? It's not sending you into anything you have to deal with. Like,
as Bowlsley, you've got to feel pretty... like, what happened? Because 2-3 turns ago, we were sitting on double-digit credits, comfortably pushing a Nisei, and now it feels like we're so poor. We've not even seen a Diversion of Funds played. There's one in the bin, but it got done with net damage. Like, what do you think the... you gotta be wondering how on earth we got here.
Yeah, I actually like the Nisei push with the second Charlotte in hand. We needed to let the Charlotte cook for longer, but with the second Charlotte in hand, we can do the Nisei shove, but we have to advance the Nisei so that we can score the Nisei, push the next Charlotte on the same turn. We don't miss a Lacosta trigger. The Charlotte is safe from HQ pokes.
Yeah, this Lacosta is currently sat there doing nothing, which is like not a position you want to be in at all.
Yeah, as a rule, if you're playing the Ag Infusion, aim to get your Lacosta trigger every turn. I think is a pretty good principle. Point. Yeah, it's a pretty good, like, if you aim to do that, you will probably win. If you can get Lacosta trigger every turn, you should be on a good track to win.
So, is it the case... It looks like click 1 we are running HQ and we haven't declared Banhar. no Banhar is interesting here. Given that we highly suspect the Tattoo Bowler on R&D, there's an interesting interplay between Banhar and Tattoo, right? Where you quite like sometimes the ability to
No.
say no to the Tattoo swap, but Banhar doesn't let you do that. So
I think what happened here was I went into the tank trying to decide where to ban Har. I couldn't make a decision, and I decided it was not worth the mental effort to try to make a decision, and so I just stopped declaring ban Har.
offering a bravado or a sure gamble, unsurprisingly, you get the gamble there. We get all of our triggers down to 3 credits, and we do steal the Sisyphus Protocol. That a card even with everything that you've got going on, that's a card that I don't think you could afford to allow Bowlsley to score.
It's almost interesting because Sisyphus Protocol in this matchup is at the same time fantastic and terrible. It's fantastic because taxing the revolver counters becomes a lot easier, but it's terrible because you don't have the money to score a 5-2, and it's
the every time to use it,
and pay one every time the off-world office. We're not playing the off-world office, which we would love in this matchup. So
we're seeing 4 cards off the top. Biovolt trashed. Looks like a subliminal messaging to me. No idea. No agendas. Oh, a Rashida. How do we feel about that? We've locked 2 cards on R&D. And trashed 2 pretty good economy cards for Bowlsley there.
Yeah, we feel good. Ideally we don't really want to deal with the remote. So this is just a way of saying we're not going to have to deal with the remote for a couple of turns.
Yeah. Playing that gamble and playing a second class act. We lost the first one to net damage, and I can see that we were probably pretty comfortable with that. I remember from watching this game that with the Seisentan, there was a lot of chatter about Bowlsley kind of forgetting to declare event every time. It just assumed. But I think that it was all okay in the end. I don't think that we ever got close to a rules issue. Credit, hedge fund. Very nice. Probably like the only turn that Bowlsley would want to see at this board state.
So the 3 subs on the Seisentan and the 7 counters on the revolver.
Yeah, because you've got the 6, then you can trash it for a 7th kind of break.
Yeah, it leads. So you're going to get a full break once and a 2 sub break twice is the way to play it. So every time you encounter it, even if it's a fresh revolver, you got to look at your hand and be like, is this the break where I take 1 or 2 net damage?
And you think that's, as a rule, more efficient than doing 2 full breaks of it? And because the Seisentan 1 sub dealing 2 damage can be pretty bad, but you're just accepting that sometimes it's going to have to fire.
We're playing Banhar, like our deck is set up to take an amount of net damage. We just have to choose when we take that net damage based on the cards that are in our hand. If they're cards that we want to keep, we do a full break. If they're cards that we don't mind losing, we do a half break.
That makes sense. Okay, so Bowlsley on 9 credits, and we still suspect that it's an Anansi on HQ. We're not declaring Banhar, and we are low on revolver credits, so you can't necessarily safely run HQ anymore until we see a second revolver come down.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it, does it?
Which is interesting. Oh, moving that aside, it's going to be a sneak door or a revolver, hoping for a second revolver, I think. And we did see a card go into the remote. I missed that from Bowlsley. Do we suspect that is a Charlotte?
We hope not. 2 Charlottes are in the bin, so we hope that it isn't a Charlotte. We're okay with an agenda push here because it takes them off a Nancy money, I think.
Do you just click for 4 credits, or did you play a gamble and click for some credits? No. I think it's gamble, revolver. Very nice. So solves that problem we were just talking about.
It makes the sneak door difficult to play because we need to have multiple... there's the Nancy. We need to have multiple revolver at table at the same time. But I think sneak door's a trap against Ag Infusion anyway. We really don't want them to res ice on archives.
Because it gives them a place where they can boop you into and...
Yeah, we sort of, if we can, we really want to pick 2 servers that we're going to run, and we only ever run those 2 servers, ideally.
Interesting. So we're using the second revolver. I'm sure there's some like points where using different numbers of counters from different revolvers will end up being relevant, but I guess we have to fully break the Anansi either way, right? Um, and the Seiss and Tan. Well, looks like you used all three counters from the revolver there on the Seiss and Tan, which makes sense.
Yeah, I don't remember what was in hand, but that will basically be saying I don't want to lose these cards that are in hand.
And you now have three counters on the table, which I guess even now, like running HQ again, is now difficult, right? Because you can't really afford to let uh, any subs fire on the first or on the Anansi, and you really can't afford to let more than one sub fire on the Seiss and
Yeah,
Tan.
if memory serves, Bowlsley here is thinking that his line is to tax out the revolver.
Oh,
Yeah,
there we go.
he's thinking his line is to tax out the revolver counters. There's two problems with that. One problem is emergency shutdown. The other problem is there is a third revolver in the deck, which with Steve means 5 revolvers.
Yeah. But the emergency shutdown, yeah, does do an awfully good amount of work there. Wow.
It really is the best card in this matchup and the most important card not to lose to incidental net damage, which is easier said than done.
Do you think that there is an argument for more reg crim decks playing emergency shutdown, even if they can't recur it, just to help in the Ag Infusion matchup?
Probably not. Koga did a very good video on Criminal. This was off the back of the Zero Steve deck that he took to, I think it was American Continentals. And that talks about the hand management problem of Criminal. And Emergency Shutdown just make sure is just another hand management problem for Criminal. So unless you're playing a deck that is specifically designed to play the hand management game, which Zero Steve is, Banhar Steve is, I think it is a difficult card to play in Red Crim, and a card that you will often just sit and stare at in hand.
Yeah. And also, it's an important moment in the game, right? Because we now have 2 emergency shutdown in the bin, which means that after any successful HQ run, we could just shut down another card.
So this shutdown being in hand explains why I did the full break on the Seiss and Tan.
Yeah.
And you breathe a sigh of relief at this point and you relax a little bit because, as you say, those 2 shutdown are not going anywhere. There's no arc lockdown. They're staying in the heap. They will be there when you need them, which is quite comforting.
So we've bravadoed and we are actually getting ag booped. Putting that Anansi in the bin exposes the Seiss and Tan, I suppose. So yeah. ag boops are a threat again, and we're probably not getting to a point where we can res that. It really is feels like quite a commanding game from Steve so far, right? There was the initial 4 or 5 turns where you were both setting up and kind of sizing up the game, but since then, since that first Nisei push, it has been pretty solid.
Yeah, the whole game turned when that Nisei got pushed. Like I say, I can't tell you how relieved I was, how happy I was to see that Nisei get pushed. The boot here is quite compelling because now we have a Seiss and Tan on the outermost.
Yeah.
Which is a great boot target. The problem is, and this is the payoff from being disciplined as the runner to only attacking a small number of servers, is I'm quite happy getting booped into HQ. I've got all these HQ triggers.
Yeah,
I'm like a HQ running. I want to run HQ every turn. So, yeah.
Interesting, and that Wake's getting charged back up. We've got a diversion of funds in hand, which if we could land that will be wow. And this is the you've got to imagine the Nisei count gets used here, right? Because
which is fine.
The Panweave plus diversion of funds being a siphon for 6 is actually weirdly impactful in a lot of board states.
So what won't be obvious, and what is a good argument for the third class act, is I have been bottoming diversion of funds all game with the class act.
Okay.
Because you can't most of the time you can't play diversion of funds. If there's any unresed ice on HQ, you can't really play the diversion of funds because it's a double. It's not like you can play it, force the ag boop, and then attack the remote. You don't have enough clicks.
And it looks like you've decided to trash the one revolver. We are going to let some subs fire here. And when and how you get those revolvers in the bin is quite interesting, right? It's um,
Yeah, it's another piece of the puzzle to manage. Getting the two revolvers into the bin so that you can go and Steve one back.
Steelskin Strike Fund. You have been getting very profitable damage so far. Having to let two of the Sicentan subs fire though is significant, and we did hit. Oh my god, quite
But
the
this is
hand to
not.
let it happen.
This is it. It looks really lucky, but there were only 4 cards in hand. 2 of them were Strike Fund and 1 was Steel Skin. So,
Yeah.
this is if you're going to let 2 Sice and 10 subs fire, that's the time to do it, right?
Yeah, and we do see the Nisei counter, which makes perfect sense. But taxing out a Nisei counter when Bowser's on this board state feels very good.
Yeah, we're happy with that. Trading a diversion for a Nisei or a Biovolt is fine. Trading it for an Ag Boop, I think, probably isn't.
That's a good way of thinking about it. I think. Yeah, and I mean, I think also like whilst we get this opportunity to talk about the Steve deck, I think it like can't be understated how much fun it is. Right, there's so many kind of interesting decision points. There's so many kind of difficult choices I think you have to make on the way in, but the power that you get as like a result, the like payoff for making all of these good decisions is also just really good. Right, going to 9 credits and installing a card in the remote server. Now, do you think you've got pretty free and easy access to HQ at this point? I suppose we only have 1 revolver counter, so we'd have to let some subs fire, but potentially could recur a revolver here. Potentially get something like that E shut down if we're gonna let force a mic res on the remote. There's definitely good ways for you to apply pressure on this board state.
Yeah, so I think this is a. I think I go into the tank a little bit here because like we're on a roll. Like we're applying so much pressure to centrals. We're in a great position, and the worry is that this remote could be a distraction. The really nice thing about the Lacosta grid, same as seamless launch in PD, there's no way for us to know that that is an agenda in the remote. It could be, but it could be a Rashida. It could be anything else.
You have to think that if Bowlsley was holding an agenda in hand, he would want to get it out of there.
Yeah, that's true. That's very very true.
But we are getting HQ. We are going to take 2 damage. We are, I hope, going to recur these rolls. And like the bravado is just making all of this so credit forwards. We do hit an event. And we hit the Docklands. Docklands a sad card to see go, but I think with your position being as dominant as it is here, probably acceptable.
Would have liked to have got the Docklands down. I think not 100% sure why I didn't. I think you click taxes you a bit because you have to click to draw and click to play really because my hand was quite low.
We go for the E shutdown, not the revolver on this board state. We must still have the other revolver in hand.
I think what we're thinking here is if that is a push, you are going to lose 3 credits. You're going to be very poor. So I think that's what we're doing here. I think what we're saying is, okay, you can have an agenda. I don't mind you having an agenda, but you can't have money and res dice.
I see. So if they push here, like, even though you don't have the revolver, you might still have access to HQ. I guess that's hard to.
I think I must have the 3rd revolver in hand because I don't think. Because otherwise, this is a problem, right? Otherwise, it's only 5 credits to res Sice and Tan.
Yeah, and it can flatline you.
Yeah, so I think my initial plan, if I remember rightly, my initial plan was to recur the revolver, and then I think I drew the revolver with Zenith chip or something like that.
Which is like one of the lovely things, right? And why you have the hardware lined up in this order that you do here, right? To make sure that you always get that draw first, which can be a filtered draw. If you have the Paragon down, you get even more kind of choice over what cards you look at.
Yeah, Paragon into a Class Act Zenith chip is crazy.
Right, so Bowsley down to 5 credits, but up to 4 points. And this is one of the crazy things about Ag Infusion, right? Is that sometimes you go from 2 points to 7 points very, very quickly, but it doesn't really look like we're set up that well to do it here. We do res size and 10, and we do go down to 0 credits to do it.
Yeah, see, I don't feel too bad about this Nisei score as the runner here. And the
No,
reason
not.
being, because there's only one Nisei counter, there's no biovolts, and the Corp doesn't have any money.
And you are choosing to let one fire, losing a Paragon, which I think at this stage of the game is probably fine, especially if you don't have any intention of putting down a Sneak Door.
Yeah, if memory serves, there were no events in hand, so I was kind of...
Although you looked at, I think, a Sneak Door Tremolo and did take the Sneak Door, but I don't necessarily know if that translates into thinking it's a card that we want to play.
Yeah, I think I labour over that decision for quite a long time, because it is awkward. Like, you have to play the Paragon first, then you have to play the Sneak Door, and you lose a Revolver. Is it worth doing that to get away into HQ that doesn't involve using Revolver, or is it better just to keep using Revolver? I think I decide just to keep using Revolver.
And we keep seeing that full up border control. You were savagely outplayed, absolutely no value off the pan weave this turn.
Yeah.
And we run R&D and we get booped back into HQ. You've got to think, if you're Bowlsley here, HQ must be pretty safe to be wanting to do this. And we do use 3 counters, so we don't take the damage here. And I think, looking over at your click trackers, you probably have 1 click left this turn after this. Oh my god! I stand corrected. How do you feel about this steal?
I mean, it puts you on 5 points. Like, it's not a bacterial programming, but
Yeah.
it does mean that MIC, which is a real problem, is now rest again. So mixed feelings, right, about that. But broadly, we're feeling pretty good, I think.
And that's our second 4-card dig on R&D and our second one without stealing an agenda.
Yeah, I think we're feeling as the runner. We're feeling like we've got all these weight counters. We're gonna get there. Like, unless the agenda is already in HQ, we should find the agenda in R&D before the Corp does.
Install
Hopefully.
Oh, thinking about it.
There is a... Sorry, go on.
It can be difficult on some of these board states, right? To like Bowsley there, clearly choosing between multiple different pieces of ice in hand that he could choose to install, which, like, I think as Agony Fusion can be like a bit of a like an important thing to know as the runner, that there's more ice in there.
I think Tattoo Bowler is the only ice you're happy to res here. I think everything else is a boop into MIC, but I could be wrong.
I think even a Tattoo Bowler res would feel pretty rough. Unless you're banhiring through it, which I don't think you would choose to do here.
Oh, because they could res and I can just say no. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
Do you know where you got those full art Paragons from? I don't think I've ever seen those.
I want to say it was a UK Nationals, the last UK Nationals in Sheffield before COVID, so I don't remember if that was FFG or NSG.
2019, I imagine that's an NSG era.
I feel like it was an FFG ult, I think.
That would make sense. That's an FFG card, right? He says, with not a huge amount of confidence.
Rain and Reverie, if memory serves.
And is this our 4th revolver of the game? Our 5th revolver of the game coming down?
I think that's the 4th, which I think means we've got one more potentially. But it starts to get awkward, right? Managing, you have to manage when they trash.
Yeah.
Because you need them both trashed together and stuff like that. So yeah, we're feeling pretty good about this game, unless the agendas are buried in R&D.
If they're right at the bottom of R&D.
Then I think Ag Infusion stabilizes and it gets very dicey.
Oh, actually, I've just remembered this is a timed final, and I think you guys are coming up pretty close to time.
Yeah, which is a little sad. It would have been nice to finish the game. Like I say, I think I'm pretty confident. I'm in a pretty good position, but it really does come down to where the agendas are.
Yeah, you can see a world where the Ag Infusion potentially pulls this back from, but it does probably take a long old while. Whereas yeah, Steve just has to touch one more agenda on R&D and win the game.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of clicking for credits in the Corp's future and hoping that R&D holds.
Yeah.
We were very lucky not to see any of the Bacterials until we're on match point.
Yeah, that is a card that makes a big difference. Although Ag Infusion, famously, one of the best IDs for going to time, right? You can just set up those board states where time's called, you've got Nisei counters, you've got Ag Infusion boops, and you can just do everything you can to make sure the runner doesn't get accesses.
Yeah, I think Steve versus Ag Infusion has got to be one of the longer matchups in the format at the moment.
And yeah, if this is getting close to time, I think that you'd be feeling pretty comfortable. I think, yeah, and that's it. Bowlsley conceding the game on time, and just very nicely done. I mean, I remember watching this game and just being like just so pleased and impressed by the way that you turned that first agenda score into a window to just put on the Steve pressure and then just like never let go of the pressure in that one.
It was a very satisfying game to play. There was a lot of thinking in the very early turns to come up with a strategy, and from there it was just implement the strategy and hope it pays off. Yeah, it was a really great game.
And it was a like quite a late finish at this point, but with enough time to pack up, go to the pub, and have like a nice evening. And so yeah, this is the finals, and you won, and so you won a regionals. How did that feel?
Yeah, it took it took a while to sink in. We had a little more pack up to do, so it was kind of like everyone were a little bit pushed for time. But no, it felt great. It felt absolutely great. To a certain extent, I felt like I owed it to Frydan. I felt
after knocking him out in the first round of the cup.
Yeah, I felt Frydan had such a great day. Like he had such a great day. I think he was undefeated in Swiss.
Yes, yeah, he was.
And like, so I felt like it was his tournament, and so I felt a little bad about knocking him out in round one of the cup. But then I also walked away and was like, well, I guess I need to win this now, right? If I don't win this, I'm going to feel really bad about it.
Yeah, and you did, and in style, it was very good. And now people watching the videos will be looking at the big Phoenix come to UK Nationals. This is the last video in the series, and the all of the live stream for UK Nationals will be on Bar Ram Woo's channel, which people can find. But yeah, it's looking like, I think at the point of recording we have somewhere just around 100 tickets already sold with more than 4 weeks left of the event, so it promises to be a massive one. So if you can get out to it, definitely worth it. What are the odds that you're playing Stephen Asmari at UK Nats, do you reckon?
80-90%.
Yeah.
I think it's almost certain. I don't know, we'll see what happens at Worlds, right? We need to see, like, I'm excited to see what kind of decks people bring to Worlds.
This is true. I would be surprised if anything knocks you off of Steve, though. Right.
Yeah, I think so too.
Thank you very much for watching, and yeah, that's the end of the regionals videos, but it's been fun, and we'll chat to you later. Bye.
Wait.